just talking to students and staff around the college about the last time they cried, in the hope that the showing of emotion is not seen as weakness. So being vulnerable is actually quite a strength, and that you're not necessarily alone when you do it. So thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. So Shane, when was the last time you cried?
Well, I have cried more recent to the story in which I'm about to convey to you. And I am an emotional person, but one of my issues is that I don't show enough emotion at times. And people often say, Mr. Mac or Shane, you're a very grounded person and you're very calm, but sometimes it's what's going on internally that is not necessarily what you're seeing externally, and that's something that I'm aware of and probably need to work on as some personal development. But on reflection to your question, Anthony, when was the last time I cried? A moment in time that really, I can recall that I was extremely upset about actually involves a time whilst I was at work many years ago at De La Salle College, and it actually involved a student who I was engaged with at the time, and it was a very sad time because it was a very unexpected passing of that particular student. And it's sort of, even just reflecting on it now, it brings back, those emotions of what it was like at the time and how raw it was at the time. But I think it caught me off guard, the news initially of the passing of that particular student, and knowing how young that student was, how healthy that student was the last time I saw him, and how, as I said, unexpected his passing. And the news of that, it really sort of impacted on me in quite a profound way. And I do remember at the time, trying to be brave, because I was I was year level coordinator, year 8 at the time. And, breaking that news to a cohort was extremely difficult, and keeping a brave face around that and being very supportive of the young men who heard that news. But then, the whole process of me trying to cope with that and deal with that separate to, supporting the students was a real challenge.
Yeah. What were the circumstances around that, Shane?
So the circumstances around the passing of that young man was an undiagnosed health issue. And, this particular young person had a love of physical exercise, as you know I do as well. And at the time, I was leading a young group of men, a young group of boys, which he was part of, with some cross-country training. So, we were running 2 or 3 times a week at school, either before school or at lunchtimes. And I was also teaching this boy art at the time, this young student. And it was only, sort of 2 days prior to his passing that we'd done a run together before school. He was telling me about some new runners that he had purchased. So he was, a real keen, enthusiastic young person, full of life, full of energy. And obviously after school one evening, he went out for a run. And unfortunately, his life, and his family, were impacted beyond belief, from when he didn't return home. So very sad and very unexpected.
Absolutely. What for you? I mean, apart from the passing of a young man, was it the future that he didn't get?
I think that really was at the heart of why I was really upset, because this was a young person who had so much to give, and he was so enthusiastic about life. He was not a student who just drifted. He was someone who was passionate about everything that he did, and I could see that in him. And he had siblings as well, and I was had a good relationship with his siblings, and his parents. So I guess, from a personal level, there was a little bit more of an interest there with this student based on, existing relationships with an older sibling already attending the school. So,
it sounds like you actually liked him.
Oh, absolutely. It was hard not to like him. There were, he was just a very likable young man, and there was obviously everyone on staff who had anything to do with him felt the pain and the grief of his passing as well. So, it was a very challenging time, and I'm able to reflect on it pretty much daily when I'm at work, Anthony, because for those of you who have noticed, as you walk into Tiverton, just on the right-hand side, as you walk in through the double gates into the front courtyard, there is a little memorial plaque there of that young man, and a tree that was planted in his honour. So I do, as part of my, just daily, sort of interaction with him and the world around me, when I walk past that plaque, I do give a thought to heaven and to that young man, and just wondering, what his life would be like now, because he would be in his early 20s now, and well and truly, in a rhythm, in his life, and establishing himself with, work and relationships, potentially family, etc. So, yeah, it is sad, but I'm reminded of the positives more than the negatives.
Okay. So in your role as year level coordinator then, you had to offer a lot of support to people. How did you get support?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I actually reached out as well as what I could have, unfortunately, and that again is to my detriment. I think I should have opened up. I should have sought some counselling at the time, because I was very, very upset. And I do recall thinking, like, it was the day after, I went out for a run, as I do, and I think I just had so much energy in my body, so much adrenaline, so much emotion. I remember just running the hardest, it must have been 10 kilometres that I've ever run. I just felt like nothing, I couldn't be stopped. I was just, so upset, and I just needed to get rid of the energy that was in my body at the time. And I remember finishing my run, and I remember collapsing, and this is the honest truth. I remember collapsing, and I just remember just I was uncontrollable. People who saw me in the park must have thought, what is going on with this bloke? But I just, it caught me out, I think. And I just was really, really upset. And I just, remember taking a moment to talk to this particular young person who, was in heaven, and just was just so upset. So yeah, you can tell it's sort of, in talking about it now, it brings back those emotions. So it was tough. I should have sought more support, to answer your question, because going for a run or doing a bit of yoga probably wasn't enough.
So that leads me to, I suppose, ask the question, what was it that stopped you from doing that?
That's a really good question again, because nothing stopped me. It's just, I think I probably felt that I could just with it and move on. I felt that what I was doing, obviously, my wife, we didn't have children then at the time. It was just the two of us. I could use her as a bit of a sounding board, but I think being around the other students and supporting them in some way was a bit of a way of me to deal with it. But yeah, I'm not too sure what stopped me, to be honest. You learn as you experience these, traumas and dealing with grief. That sometimes it's better speaking out than just trying to process it yourself.
Because you're not someone who strikes me as that typical macho male, got to be strong, got to be,
that's the complete opposite. I'm Cancerian, so that's probably the complete opposite in terms of being sensitive and in tune, with emotions and other people's emotions. Maybe I've definitely, just with maturity, I think, over time you understand the importance of reaching out and discussing issues with with people more openly that help you. At the time, I was still, early in my teaching career, late 20s, maybe still just feeling as though I could deal with it myself. But I think as you get older, certainly as I've gotten older, I've understood the importance of using the people around you and not being afraid to engage, and open up, your emotions to people, because that's, there are people there to help. May not be able to fix, but just listening, and being in that opportunity to listen can be really helpful.
So if we go back to that young man who passed away very tragically, would you do things differently now for yourself, trying to manage those emotions?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you have to walk the walk if I'm talking the talk. So yeah, of course I would. I mean, if I would never want to go through that experience again, and I hope no teacher ever has to go through that experience again, parent, family, etc. But I know now that there are people out there that are very much equipped, to provide the tools to help support either myself or other people through loss and grief. Such as a really tragic incident like that. So I definitely do things differently going forward, because I feel like that incident back in 2007, it did hold me back. I probably went into my shell, and I just didn't feel right for a long time. Maybe 6 months.
What was that about? Do you think, Shane? Was it?
Well, I just think that. It was just a heaviness, like a feeling of heaviness and a handbrake that I couldn't find my rhythm again. I just felt a bit, despondent about life in general. Like, how could this happen? Why is life so, all those questions around
the unfairness of it.
This is it. This is so unfair. That poor family, look at the impact that it's having on the community. It was just, a sense of great loss, and I think that goes with grief, obviously. But I didn't know how to bounce back at the time, and it was a process. It really was, just slowly chipping away at dealing with it, and I mean, I still haven't fully dealt with it, obviously, because I'm talking about it now, and I'm still quite emotional when I talk about it.
Yeah, but do you think, Shane, that modern life has sort of implied that we should move through things and be done with them? That once they're experienced, they're over. I'm not convinced that life works that way.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think, it's all about cycles, really, and I sort of feel like it ebbs and flows. That there might be some weeks or months or years that pass by and you're able to progress without going back to that feeling. But then in talking about this now, there might be some days when I walk past that place on the yard and I think about it, and depending on how I'm feeling at the time, what's going on in my life, it might linger for a couple of days. So but that's okay now. Like, I understand that now. That's perfectly fine.
So you're okay with feeling an emotion and carrying emotion?
I'm not okay, but I'm more comfortable with it, Anthony. Yeah, I'd say I'm more comfortable with it because I'm more aware of myself and how to deal with that. So, and I'm sure other young men in the community would be feeling the same about certain situations. Yeah.
You feel that there's mainly positive memories about you smile as you walk past that plaque and think about this young.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Okay.
So
and there's tinge, isn't it?
It is a tinge, and he, this particular young boy, he will always leave a strong legacy. I think, even though he was so young, he actually coined a phrase, and I think a lot of students who have been, or have had older siblings go through will be familiar with this sort of slogan or phrase. But being part of, the cross-country team at the time, he's a very committed young bloke, as I said, very determined in all facets of his life, but particularly his running. He actually coined the slogan, which stuck, no regrets. Yeah. No regrets. And we actually printed on some DLR singlets that term, no regrets. Yeah. And it became, it's not used so much, in the last 5 years, but certainly, following his passing, it was something that was a constant in everything at De La Salle. Have no regrets about running. Have no regrets about joining a co-curricular event with your studies, with friendships, everything you do in life. And
maybe asking that girl out and she's saying no.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a wonderful thing. How profound, for a 13-year-old, year 8, to have read something or heard something and then to take it and live it, and leave it behind, after being taken away so tragically. I do reflect on that often. I think, what an absolute champ, what an amazing young person who still had so much to give. That he, leaves that legacy, no regrets. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Did his parents aware of that? How
100%. Yeah.
So he lives on. Either, and not just through the memorial of the plaque and the saying, but again lives on in your memory, of the memories of the other people who knew him and his family's memory. So isn't that a beautiful thing? And sad that he's not with us, but having had you would rather have had him in your life than not have him in your life.
100% for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks, Anthony.
We'll speak soon, no doubt.
No worries.